The newsday continues here in One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Trade Department has imposed a price freeze on basic necessities in several areas following the impact of Typhoon Egay. The price freeze is effective in provinces like Pampanga, Bulacan, and Bataan. The same is implemented in Zaragoza, Nueva Ecija, as well as in Camiling and Paniqui in Tarlac. This means there can be no increase in prices of basic goods like canned goods, bread, milk, bottled water, coffee, and soap. Over 180 provinces have also been placed under a state of calamity. Among them are the entire provinces of Ilocos Norte and Sur, Cagayan, Pampanga, and Bataan. The entire province of Cavite has also declared a state of calamity, together with Abra, the Mountain Province, Apayao, and Benguet. Other areas include towns in La Union, Pangasinan, Dagupan City, Bulacan, Tarlac, and Occidental Mindoro. Due to the declaration, LGUs may now use their quick response funds to distribute aid to constituents affected by the typhoon. Despite the impact of Egay and Falcon, the National Economic and Development Authority believes the recent typhoons are unlikely to dampen overall economic growth. So far, Typhoon Egay left an estimated 3.5 billion pesos worth of damage to infrastructure and damage worth 3.17 billion pesos to agriculture. However, in a televised interview, NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says Egay's effect on the agriculture sector is not substantial. According to Balisacan, the typhoon did not hit during the harvest season for basic agricultural products. Balisacan also assures that the country has adequate stocks of rice. The NEDA chief says imports that came in earlier this year allow the country to have enough buffer stocks. Here to give us her insights on Balisacan's latest statements as well as her inflation forecast for the month of July, we have with us on the show China Banking Corporation's Chief Economist, Domini Velasquez. Good morning, Domini.
Good morning, Diego.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Let's get right to it. Agri damage from Egay is now pegged at over 3 billion pesos. Prices have begun to climb in the recent days. Though, according to NEDA, the recent typhoons are unlikely to dampen our economic growth. What's your take on this statement by NEDA?
I guess so far right now, since we just have two strong typhoons, right? The damage is not so much, but of course we are expecting stronger typhoons moving forward. If I understand correctly, the government is anticipating harsher El Nino in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
So that would impact the GDP growth. Right now, we're not so sure yet because we haven't reached that point yet. But one more thing, it's not just domestic production that we're concerned about. Even globally, rice prices are already increasing. India is also banning exports of some of its rice products, which will affect prices in places where we import rice from. That's Vietnam and Thailand.
And speaking of inflation, tomorrow I think the data will come out. What's your projection on this?
Well, our projection is 4.7. That's slightly below the median average of analysts at 4.9, but slightly above the midpoint of BSP's 4.1 to 4.9% projection. So I think generally most think that the inflation will fall below 5% already. The last time that happened was April 2022.
And if we do feel an increase or a speed up in inflation because of the typhoons, when do you think we will experience this, or at least the stomachs of our kababayans?
Right now, we're seeing higher prices of vegetables in the past month. So we think there is still some uptick in that trend in terms of vegetables. Prices are still increasing day on day. So that's what we're very watchful of, just because food makes up a big percent of your inflation basket.
That's
right?
And you were talking about El Nino a while ago, and we were also seeing a big time oil price hike. When do you think these factors will be felt by our country in terms of growth, inflation, money in our pockets? When do you think we will feel these impacts?
For For oil prices, of course, we saw in the past 3 to 4 weeks, we've seen a week-on-week increase in oil prices. This is just, reflective of what's happening globally. And we've actually expected this. Various international organizations have actually forecasted it that in the second half of this year, we'll see higher oil prices just because, OPEC Plus has cut its production. Um, some advanced countries are actually proved to be more resilient than initially
Yes.
anticipated. So it's driving demand. China's growth might pick up, so that will drive demand and demand for oil also. And additionally, post pandemic, we saw a shift from people's demand for goods from goods to services. So, for example, you have people traveling already, and that actually takes up a lot of your oil production, right?
Yes.
So we do think we'll settle near the $80 per barrel this second half, and I think that's also programmed by the government already in terms of DBCC assumptions of oil prices.
Right, right. And you think it's still possible for full year inflation to settle within the BSP's around the 2 to 4% target?
Yes, we're still fairly confident that by October we'll be near the 4% target, maybe a little bit below. However, we do recognize the upside risks and increasing risks to inflation, especially since because of this El Nino. Additionally, oil prices are increasing. And then for the wage hikes that we saw in Metro Manila, so I think around September we'll see the wage hike from proposals from other regional wage boards. So those are the key risks that we're really looking at.
And given all these factors, do you also believe that the Monetary Board may extend its policy hold this month?
For us, yes, likely because of two things. First, inflation is really on a downtrend. We might see a little bit of a similar inflation print in August as July, just due to base effects. But generally, the trend is going down. Core inflation is a little bit more elevated, but also on the way down. We think core inflation will be within target January next year. Additionally, one of the things that we were really very concerned about was really this interest rate differentials with the Fed. So now that we're at 75 interest rate differential, meaning the policy rate of the BSP minus the Fed, right? Financial markets were actually a little bit more behaved than we expected. So the peso did not depreciate drastically. So we think financial markets will be more tolerant to this steaming interest rate differential and not forcing the BSP to actually hike in line with the Fed.
Well, interesting insights, but unfortunately, ma'am, that's all the time we have. But thank you for joining us this morning on One News Now. China Banking Corporation's Chief Economist, Domini Velasquez. Good morning.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News. You're still watching One News Now. I'm Diego Castro. Aboitiz Equity Ventures Incorporated and Coca-Cola Euro-Pacific Partners, or CCEP, want to jointly acquire Coca-Cola Beverages Philippines. The purchase is worth $1.8 billion, or around 99 billion pesos. The deal to buy Coca-Cola Philippines will be on a 60-40 ownership structure between Aboitiz and CCEP. Aboitiz revealed that it has already signed a non-binding term sheet and is currently in advanced discussions with CCEP on the potential joint transaction. Once the definitive agreements are sealed, the joint venture is expected to close at the end of fiscal year 2023. The House of Representatives has received from the Budget Department its 5.768 trillion peso proposed national budget for 2024. That's almost 10% bigger than this year's 5.267 trillion peso budget. The proposed allocation for the education sector is set at 924 billion pesos, higher than the 900 billion pesos it received under the 2023 General Appropriations. Education gets the largest slice of the pie, as mandated by the Constitution. The proposed budget for the transportation sector, meanwhile, sees the highest climb from this year's budget. That's at 214 billion pesos, more than double their current target. The proposed 2024 allotment for public works is at 822 billion pesos, 209 billion for social welfare, and 306 billion for health. Meanwhile, the agriculture sector is proposed to receive a 181 billion peso allotment, 259 billion for interior and local government, 232 billion for defense, and 40 billion for labor and employment. Across all agencies, the total proposed confidential fund stands at 4.8 billion pesos, while proposed intelligence funds is at 5.2 billion pesos. The Office of the President will get a total of 4.5 billion pesos in intelligence and confidential funds. Also proposed is the 500 million pesos in confidential funds for the Office of the Vice President Sara Duterte and 150 million pesos for DepEd, the agency she leads.
Confidential and intel funds, meron naman pong guidelines yan from COA on how to use the funds. May breakdown din po yan when we request the budget. So it's not, there's full transparency po in terms of the request for these funds.
House Speaker Martin Romualdez vows that their version of the 2024 national budget will be pork barrel free. He says deliberations on next year's budget will be transparent and notes that Congress will prioritize the needs of Filipinos. Budget deliberations for the proposed 5.768 trillion peso spending plan will begin next week.
I'm confident that the House of Representatives will be able to scrutinize, deliberate, and pass a national budget that is pork barrel free for 2024 before we go on our first recess in October.
The House Ways and Means Committee has given the green light on a substitute bill outlining a fiscal framework for the mining industry. The approved bill proposes a 3% royalty rate from the gross output of large-scale metallic mining operations within mineral reservations. Meanwhile, those outside mineral reservations will be subject to a margin-based royalty on income. Small-scale mining will incur royalties of 0.1% of their output. Metallic mining operations will also face a windfall profits tax based on their profit margins. Miners with margins between 35% and 40% will be subject to a 1% rate, while those with margins exceeding 80% will face a 10% rate. The Chamber of Mines believes further tax increases may not be necessary at this time. However, they manifested their support for the bill if the country is in need of a new fiscal regime for post-pandemic recovery. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.